You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
And welcome back. Here's a look at some of the political headlines of the past week. Property taxes are going up in Hale County. MyPlainview.com reporting that Hale County commissioners voted unanimously to raise property taxes rates there to 61.8 cents per $100 of valuation. That's a jump of just over 8%. The company Omega Flex has filed paperwork now to dismiss their lawsuit against the city of Lubbock for its laws banning the type of flexible gas pipe known as CSST. The city partially banned its use following the death of a man named Brennan Teal, who died after an explosion here in 2012. But new state law forbids such a ban, so the city called it off, thus no need for a lawsuit. What a bizarre couple of weeks politically for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. First, the generally hard-right conservative breaking with the National Rifle Association and joining the call to require background checks for stranger-to-stranger gun sales. Then, when criticized for that on Twitter by Empower Texans head Michael Quinn Sullivan, Patrick gave his former ally a shot back, tweeting, "You know my plan exempts family and friends, so apparently you're fine with selling your guns to total strangers who can't pass the background check because they couldn't be a violent felon or someone bent on mass violence." Then Patrick tweets, "By the way, release the tape, you're destroying our party." And in reference to Sullivan's recording, of course, of his meeting with House Speaker Dennis Bonnen, Representative Dustin Burrows, where Sullivan claims he was offered media credentials in exchange for targeting several Republicans in the next election cycle. The governor stopped short of endorsing those types of mandatory background checks, by the way, but he does seem willing to listen. And if some of you gun owners are wondering how this could be happening, it's because a lot of people seem to be okay with it. This is our unscientific but usually close to accurate poll from this show last week. We asked, if you sell a gun to a stranger, are you willing to require that the buyer submit to a background check before the sale? 74% of you said sure, no problem. 74% is hard to look away from in the political world. The governor is definitely going to listen to that. And recommendations as well from the legislature's new mass violence and community safety committees. They have until December now to come up with changes to state law to help stop mass shootings. KMAX West Rappaport was at this week's first meeting of the House committee.
It goes without saying, the Texans are hurting.
From changes to gun sales to social media tracking, Texas lawmakers are exploring solutions after deadly mass shootings in El Paso and Odessa.
Most significant threat right now is a self-radicalized lone actor using available weapons against soft targets. That's number one. And so we say self-radicalized, it goes to the propaganda. And the propaganda has proliferated throughout the internet world. And of course, some of that is racially based. Okay, neo-Nazis, Christian identity.
The Texas Department of Public Safety's top official says that's what happened in El Paso.
Theory about Muslims replacing, Muslims from African countries replacing Anglos, okay, Christian Anglos in countries, in other countries in Europe. And of course, he took it to New Zealand. And of course, the mass shooter in El Paso took that theory and applied it to Hispanics.
Department leaders say they're watching for racist rhetoric online and acknowledge there are shortcomings in identifying a potential for violence.
We're not doing all we can with protective orders where judges have actually said this individual shouldn't have a firearm. They're suspected of domestic violence or stalking or sexual assault. And the judges said that, but we're not checking on them.
Things that aren't going to infringe on the Second Amendment, but common sense solutions that just make it more difficult for shooters to commit crimes against people.
In Austin, Wes Rappaport, KMAC News.
All right, Wes, thank you so much. Let's spend 5 good minutes with our friend, the chair of the Lubbock County Democratic Party, John Gibson. Always good to see you.
Good to be here, Brian.
A lot of state and federal leaders seem now to be at least willing to deal on gun issues a little bit. Do you feel like, though, that there's a deal out there that won't run afoul of the Second Amendment, that can make a lot of people happy, that won't end up in court for 10 years or so?
Well, I think what's going on right now is the public is sort of, like you said, they're coalescing around this idea that something needs to be done. Mm-hmm. You have Dan Patrick looking at the polls and seeing that 84% of Texans support some type of restrictions on stranger-to-stranger gun sales. Mm-hmm. So we've at least got to start there. And then from there, we can go on. There are, as you know, there are polls that support restrictions on other things as well when it comes to gun control. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think we're going to see some type of movement on that.
Along those lines, Beto O'Rourke had himself a little bit of a moment in the Houston presidential debate that everyone's still talking about. Does that help or hurt things? I mean, because let's face it, with dealing with a larger crowd, talk of confiscation of weapons is a little bit different than talk of just adding a layer to gun sales.
Well, he didn't talk about confiscation of weapons. He talked about buying those weapons back.
Right.
And you have to understand that we did just fine with a ban on assault weapons in the Clinton administration. We didn't take away all weapons. It was only a ban on assault weapons. And Beto was talking to the home court. You know, he was in Houston. The debate was there, and he had a home crowd and got himself a moment. You're right. With something that has overwhelming support amongst Democrats, which is an assault weapons ban. We don't need weapons that are designed to kill human beings for sale in this country.
Do debates over these type of issues, though, do they help at the local level at all as far as recruitment of volunteers, candidate recruitment even, fundraising, things like that?
They do, because they motivate people who they see an issue and they say, yeah, I agree. You know, when only 2 hours south of us we see a gunman go and mow down so many of the population there, that hits close to home. And people start saying, hey, if it could happen there, it could happen here. I got to get involved in my local government, my local political parties, and do something about this.
What's the motivation for local workers and candidates nowadays? I mean, is it an anti-Trump thing? Is it some of the problems we've seen with Representative Burrows that we've talked about a lot on the show, some of the squabbling maybe among county commissioners here in Lubbock on the GOP side? What is it that's fueling the fire there a little bit?
Well, one thing is it's an unresponsive Republican government. We've had Republican Party in control for the past 30 years, and they're not responsive to their populace. Instead, they're responsive to political action committees, namely Empower Texans. And so you have Dustin Burrows, who has gone around since he's come out of hiding to go on a talk radio show, to do the Republican Women's Club, and to do a tweet in support of one of his fellow colleagues. He has said, hey, all I did was I met with Empower Texans to tell them, cut it out. Instead, go after these 10 people. Well, who are those 10 people? Those were 10 people who were thwarting his efforts to limit local taxpayer dollars supporting lobbyists. Now, I agree that's a problem, but why is it a problem? It's a problem because our local counties, school boards, cities feel like someone like Dustin Burrows isn't listening to them. And so the only way that they can make any headway is to go out and hire lobbyists. Be more responsive to your constituents, but the Republicans don't get that.
Well, Republicans are behind the scenes, but looking for a lot of people to run against them a little bit. I don't think that that's anything that's not common knowledge now. There are some Democratic candidates to do the same. Are there more lining up to say, I want to get involved in this for those kind of reasons, not just in his district, but in others?
There are, and we are having meetings in that regard, and that's about as far as I can go on that.
No announcements to be made yet?
There will be, I think there will be an announcement to be made very, very soon.
Okay, well, we will watch for that. What about you? What about you? Are you going to want to do this again as a chairman, or to do something else as far as running for office?
I've got a son who's a senior at Coronado High School, and my hands are full just getting him graduated.
The parents out there will go, yes, we understand that completely. What's life going to be like for county chair as we roll now into the primary election season process, and with all of this in mind?
Well, we are ramping up to go back to having monthly meetings. We had been having meetings on a bi-monthly basis to give our local committees, our intra-party committees, time to get things done. Now we're going back to monthly meetings, and so then our intra-party committees will be meeting even more frequently so that we can get things done and get our candidates elected.
People want to be part of that, they can contact you or at the headquarters?
They can contact me, they can contact our headquarters, they can go on our website, they can go on Twitter, all those different places.
Get in touch with them if you'd like to do such a thing. Democratic Party Chairman for Lubbock County, John Gibson. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian.